Okay. Okay, we should be live right now. So, Nathaniel, taking your coat off, getting ready
Yeah,
for the big questions.
ready,
All
ready.
right, let's
Yeah,
go. If I had a coat, I'd take mine off too, like Mr. Rogers, by putting the sweater on.
do the zip and down zip.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we have Nathaniel. I feel like, have been friends on LinkedIn for quite a while now, haven't we?
Yes, yeah. I don't even remember where it started. I think it was like in a comment on somebody else's post, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Let's just connect. And like,
Yeah,
what? Okay, here we go.
yeah. The best way friendships are made on
Yes,
LinkedIn.
exactly.
So you are the SEO marketing dad. I love that. I love the hat. And
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, when we were getting ready for this, there were a lot of people putting stuff in the comments saying they were excited to hear about your career journey because you have pivoted careers yourself. And a lot of what I talk about is pivoting and changing careers and reinventing yourself. And so maybe we could just start where you could tell me a little bit about where you've been and where you are now.
Yeah. So I was a traveling printer technician, and I traveled all over the U.S. I mean, I loved the work because there was a lot with my hands.
Yeah.
I love working with my hands, but I hated the travel. And my wife and I were like, if we want kids, like you're going to be gone. I'm gonna be raising this baby by myself. I'm like, yeah, I don't want that to happen. So I started at the company I was working with. That I actually, it was kind of happenstance. I just happened to look over the salesperson's email he was sending out for an invite for a like an event we were going to do, like like an
Hmm.
open house. Come, look at these printers and get some free barbecues in Texas. And I was like, is that the final draft, or is that, like, is this a working model? He's like, no, this is what we always use. I'm like, that's terrible. Like, how do I say this nicely? Like, it just looks horrible. And so I was like, let me just design one for you. And so it kind of started like happenstance. I was like, okay, I can maybe do this. And I was like, well, I can also work on the website because I took a class in high school. They're like, okay, yeah. And then with that, we were a reseller for HP, and they have this like partner network is what they call it,
Hmm.
where they have like a partner marketing manager that works with all of the connected companies that resells their printers, and gives you like free advice, essentially. Like, here's some sell sheets, you can put your own brand on it. That was like, in the wide format printing world, that was like, whoa, like we're going to put our own brand next to each, like now that I'm like out of that world, I'm like, okay, that's not that cool. But in that world, I'm like, this is awesome. And so it just so happened that the main lady there, she happened to be in Houston, which is where I was at. And so she actually came in, I met her in person. And so like there was a personal relationship there. And they got me connected. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do all this stuff. And so I just did it on the side because I was already making decent money. I was like, I can do this and build some skills and work on some marketing, and this maybe could
Hmm.
be a career, but maybe not. Like, at the time it was more like, I'm just going to build some skill sets. And I was like, maybe I'll do this and then go to college, and maybe I can make a transition in 10 years or something. But over the course of, I mean, I would say 6 months, it was like really fast. Because I got a personal relationship with her, she said, hey, we're going to invite you out to California to meet like the big marketing people, like the global SEO, global digital marketing, like all these like people I would never be in a room with, just because I met her there. And so I was just like, okay, heck yeah, I'll definitely go. And so I got a free trip to, what was that? Not
Nice.
San Francisco, somewhere in California, San Diego. That's where it was at.
Yeah.
So I got like the chauffeur, like the black car, like the black SUV. They spent their money. Like so I got like chauffeured in, and I'm talking to all these people, and they're all like massive companies, like just huge. And I'm like this guy who works out of Houston, Texas, with like, there's not like a giant reach. It's just very, regional. And I'm like, why am I in this room? And it just happened because I networked with the right lady who happened to be in the same area. So it's kind of happenstance. So I probably shouldn't be where I'm at. It was more luck than anything.
Hey,
But
now, I hate when people say that.
well, no, I mean, because like outside of that room, like if I wouldn't have been in there, like I don't know that I would have kept going, because it's like
Yeah.
it just I knew what I was making, and I knew how long it would take to get there, starting from the bottom. But I just networked my way there. And again, I was given like doing all this extra work on the side for free because I was making a salary, and I was like, okay, I can do this. And because of that meeting, I actually met with a person who was looking for a marketer, and I was like, hey, I can do marketing. And he's like, okay, cool, let's do this. And so like switched companies, and that kind of like was
Yeah.
like the big, it was in the same industry. And so like that's what I try to tell people, like do some work in your industry and then try to find something within that same industry, because you have your
Hmm.
background in whatever you were doing before plus the marketing side. And so I had like an insider scoop, like I know how these printers work. I know what people are searching for because I but on the other side, selling it or fixing it and talking to like the actual customers. Cause like I was really the face of the company, because like, you just pick up a phone, hey, I'm looking for this. And you're not really going to be in person minus the one time you deliver the printer, but I'm there consistently
Yeah.
over, 5 years. And so I knew like the back of my hand what the problems were, what people are doing, like I mean, just in depth, like the stuff you wait lifetime almost to like understand. And so I just had that knowledge. And again, I gave it away for free and then went there and started working. And that kind of was like the shift. And like, okay, I can make marketing my thing because I did
Yeah.
it. So that was kind
I
of like how it
think
happened.
that's so important to call out too, because like you just, I love like when any of us retell our backgrounds, right? We're like, da 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 da, we tell like the little 2 to 5 minute story, and it's like, and that's how it all happened. And it sounds so tidy in so many ways. But I don't want people to miss the fact of like that nugget that was in there, that you took something that you knew, you looked for an opportunity, you raised your hand and said, hey, I can help with that. And you put yourself in a space where you felt interested, curious, talented. It wasn't your day job. If you would have gone the traditional route of pursuing this, it would have taken you a long time. But instead of pursuing someone validating you first and saying, okay, Nathaniel, now you're ready to be a marketer, you went, I can do that. And you went and you did it. And you did some stuff for free. And you put yourself in the room with the right people by raising your hand and saying, okay, I'll step up and give that a go. And it's really smart, actually. So, to your thing about saying you were in a room you shouldn't have been in and you were lucky, you weren't lucky, you were smart, because you bet on you, right? Like, even though you weren't validated externally as a certified marketer, you had this interest and this passion and this ability, and you said, I'm going to go do this and show people I can do it. And someone went, yeah, this guy can do this. And then you went to the next step.
Yeah.
And so many pivoters out there think they have to get like the endorsement first. You have to get the blessing from somebody else to say that you're good enough before you can be good enough. And I mean, okay, like if you want to be a doctor, you're probably actually going to have someone
Yes.
say you're good enough. Like, and we would all appreciate that. But for many jobs, it's a matter of finding creative ways of showing that you can do it.
Oh
And
yeah.
I know I kind of cut you off there because this isn't where your story ends, but I don't want people to miss that, like, this was so brilliant of you. Like, this is a brilliant thing to do, to look around and look for the opportunities. So, anyways, continue your story.
No, that's a good call. And actually, I was very fortunate that we hadn't had kids yet, and I traveled so much. So, like I had a lot of time to myself. I was on
Yeah.
planes, I was sleeping in hotel rooms. Like again, like probably I'd say 80% of the time. So it really worked
Mm,
well. If I had to do it now, it'd be a lot more difficult. I mean, I would just be staying up late. I mean, you're already tired as a as a parent, so you just live tired. But yeah, so I did that and I stayed there. I did take a bit of a pay cut, and I think that's something that's hard to grasp. You're not always going to make exactly what you've made
yeah.
after 10 years of doing something. I made enough to where I was like, okay, we can live comfortably. We can make some changes, but like, I'm going to take a bit of a pay cut because I'm not, I don't have 10 years of marketing experience. I have 10 years of, printer technician experience with like
Hmm.
2 years of marketing experience on the side. And so I was like, okay, like we'll do this. My wife was okay with it. She thankfully has, well, now she stays home with our girls, so she's like all in that. But before that, she was working her way up in the dental world, and so like she made enough where it's like we could offset enough to like do this. And so it was a risk. We had to move to Oklahoma City, which we were in Houston for my job, and then we moved there. So it was a big risk, changing jobs, changing areas. No friendship. We knew nobody. So I think that's another big call out that I think, it's like sometimes, like you said, you have to bet on yourself because no one else is going to bet on you, right? Like you have to prove yourself to other people, but you can bet on yourself. And sometimes you're going to take a risk that other people are going to say that's dumb. Like you have a great career in
Hmm.
a thing. You're like, why would you switch? Well, because I hate it. So
Yeah. It's a good
I'm,
reason.
yeah, I hate traveling. I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
um, And so we thankfully she was my support during that
Mhm.
time, and I built even more of my career there. It's like, okay, like I'm testing these things. They had not really had anybody do it, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to try all these things. I had a very limited budget, and so that's kind of where SEO dad kind of started, because I'm like, okay, I don't have ads. So like, how can we do this? Let's do organic. Like that, we're going to have to go organic. We did a lot of outbound sales
Mhm.
that has nothing to do with marketing, but like I got to go organic. And so we doubled down on that, and we saw some crazy results. I'm like, oh, this is, I mean, I felt good. I was like, look at me. I came in here and like, I proved it to myself. Like I did this. And then I did that for 2.5 years. And then, the self-doubt kicks in. You're like, oh man, like this, like I'm never going to go above this. Like I can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And my wife, thankfully, like find somebody who's going to do this for you. My wife said, Nathaniel, you are selling yourself short. Like you look at what you've done from where you started, now look at where you can go. And I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe you're right. And so put myself out there, and thankfully my results transferred enough to where someone's like, hey, in the software space, let's, you know, I want you to be on my team. I was like, oh, this is great. Like I was like, that was like the next step of my transition into the career. It's like, okay, I need to get out of this industry,
Mhm.
make it to the industry that like I want to be in. I wanted to be in the tech space. Printing is sort of tech, but it's like for being a technical field, it's very untechnical, right? It's very like outdated. And so I
Yeah,
was like, I want to
right.
go somewhere where I'm going to have like the state of the art everything. Like I want to, live this, but like take what I've done here and have a budget, or have, tools and all these resources and the team surrounding me. And shout out to Lori. She's probably, I don't know if she's going to watch, or she's my connection, but she took a bet on me again. And that was like my transition into like the software space, and then kind of the rest is history. Just like working my butt
Yeah.
off in all these different places, and also in the startup world. I love startups. It's not for everybody because you do a lot of things and you work a lot of weird projects and stuff gets shifted, but you could learn really fast in a startup. Like, in six
Yeah.
months, I did more in 6 months than I did in 2.5 years at the
Yeah.
previous company, because it's just like fast. We need results. We need this. We need that. We have 10 products. We're now shifting those 10 to do 2 products, and it's crazy.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It's kind of like jumping into the deep end of the pool and figuring out how to swim. There's a lot of
Yes.
motivation to do so, and yeah, and once you learn, it's fast. Um, you were talking about this betting on yourself thing, and I really, again, I like that. I like that theme that in these pivots that you've made, it hasn't always looked like an obvious, easy, smooth, risk-free path. And a lot of the pivoters I've worked with, I would say, it's different for everybody, right? You have to look at your own
Yeah.
situation, of course, because, there's a lot of factors. But sometimes it does involve taking a step that's like, I don't know, is this kind of crazy? And, just assessing your risks, I guess I would say, of saying, like, if this goes belly up, what's the worst case scenario? And not that you want that to happen, but um,
You got to be
if you don't
prepared.
take that chance, you never would have been there, I guess is my point. And the other piece that I really, really, really like that you did is, you made this first move from a printer tech to doing marketing work because you took what you knew in an industry, you were in that industry, and you just kind of changed your function within the
Yep.
industry. And then once you got into the function, then you moved industries. And that strategy is actually really smart, where it's like, I always tell people, like, working with what you have in your suitcase. So you have things that are assets where you've earned some equity or some credentials or credibility, and you want to leverage that, and then look at where do you want to maybe have a little more vulnerability. So you're going to be a little more vulnerable and new if you move to a new industry. That's a risk, but you're grounded still in your marketing skills that you've built a foundation of. Before that, you were grounded in knowing the printing industry, and you could be a little wobbly on your marketing skills as you strengthen and develop those. So I love that idea of moving from like lily pad to lily pad, or picking one thing where you're going to be vulnerable and one thing where you're still really anchored and confident in yourself, as a really smart way to kind of keep propelling yourself forward.
Oh yeah, and like I took some of the skills. Like obviously, I'm never going to fix a printer, and as a marketer, I mean, maybe if I'm in an office and it's like a printer's
Yeah.
not working, I could maybe like, yeah, let me just go
You
see
tell
what's
people
wrong.
so they know that you're the guy that can come fix the printer.
It's like, yeah, like this is one reason you should hire me. But like I took the skill set of like, okay, like I'm solving problems, I'm understanding like how things work, and like I like to like dissect things, right? Like I'm not dissecting any like physical object, but it's like I'm
Yeah.
dissecting campaigns, I'm dissecting the data. And so like I found those things that I could really latch onto from my previous skill set that I could bring over as like an added bonus. It was easy because I did the industry to like industry first, and so it's like those things just naturally came. But like I
Yeah.
think trying to do both at once, it would have been a hard sell saying like, oh, I have like technical experience and like troubleshooting and like I can break these things down. But because I leveraged it within the industry first as like a way to say, okay, I not only have industry experience, but I also have like the background of like understanding why things work and wanting to understand how they work. Because I mean, you can ask my wife. I take stuff apart all the time. Like if
Yeah.
anything's broken in this house, I have guaranteed it's had my soldering iron on it because it's just the kind of person I am. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we could go buy a new one, but no, I have a tool bag full of just spare parts that I'll just fix it myself because that's just who I am. And so I take that and I use it in my marketing career because I want to know like why did that campaign work here but not over here, or
Mhm.
why is that one working? How can I do it in my industry or in my company or with our product? And so I like you got to find those like those skills that are going to translate over, but you have to like translate them. It's not going to be an exact carryover. It's going to be a translation of it as well.
So talk to me a little bit about the SEO marketing dad and everything that you're doing today. Like what do you do? Because I think a big part of this too is we have a lot of pivoters who think, what can I do next? And they hear the same three jobs. It's like when you're a kid and it's like, do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a veterinarian, right? You get the same stuff. And then there's like all of these nuance. No one ever talks about like, do you want to be a podiatrist or a dermatologist or even in those anchor three that we always hear about. So for you, SEO marketing dad, you're working for yourself, you're consulting, right? And um, who are you working with? What are you doing? What does your day look like?
Yeah, so I still have my day job, thankfully, because like that's I think the people that go all in on themselves, I'm like that's great for you. I don't know that I could ever do it just because like
Yeah.
I'm as much as I enjoy the risk of like certain things, I'm very risk adverse in a lot of things still. But SEO marketing dad, there was two reasons it started. First was because a previous employer reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to continue working with you. We liked your results. Can we still work together?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So I started doing some stuff, and then a company I was working at, I was trying to prove that you could build on social, and like there was
Hmm.
having a social following can help you sell. And so I started posting on LinkedIn and on TikTok, and it kind of just I branded myself the SEO marketing dad because I was like, what's like the one thing like I want to be known for, what do I know that about more of than other people that are already doing some of these things. And I was like, SEO. I was like, I have really good results with SEO. I can do all the things, but like this is like the thing that like I love doing. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I can talk about it in a room full of people. So don't ever, if you ever see me in real life, don't ever ask me about SEO because I will corner you and you'll be my person for the rest of the night. So
You know,
um
I'm going to ask you that question next, right?
yeah,
For real.
yeah. Well, you're gonna be cornered. um,
Go on, people.
Yep. So I just kind of started offering it, and then people like what was like the surprising thing, which isn't really surprising when I think about it, but I was giving away all this value. Like here, here's how you can do it yourself. Here's how like small businesses can do this, or here's how you can other marketers can like change some things and like see some quick results. And then people are like, hey, like I'm doing this myself, but like could I pay you to do it? And I'm like, I mean, let me like talk about it. Like so, I didn't have an offer or anything like that. I was
Yeah.
just like very unprepared. I didn't have a website, I didn't have anything. Like my LinkedIn was just my name, and then my TikTok was like SEO marketing dad. So it was weird. So I didn't have uh, like anything just set in place. So like I was very unprepared for it, and then I'm like, okay, crap. Like I gotta like build a website and do all. I was like, well, actually,
Yeah.
doing all these things first. Like let me just come up with an offering. Like, can I do this? Do I want to do this? And kind of just took that, and then I started, as I'm working with on these other projects, I'm like, okay, I'll work on my website like on my lunch break, or I'll do these things, and Uh, so it kind of finally became like a real company, created an LLC. I did the work, and it kind of made it something. And so, I mean, I try to stay, so I love small businesses. So I do have like small business packages because, again, I've worked in small businesses. A lot of like the small or the wide format printing companies were all small
Hmm.
businesses, and they have a need. They just don't have the budget to pay like a full time marketer. And
Yeah.
organic growth is something, like long term, it scales. So I have, packages for small businesses, but I really like startups. And so like that's like startups and e-commerce are like my bread and butter. Like that's like those are the companies I know for a fact I can come in, make some changes, and you're gonna see results. Um, what those results are really depends on the company because like there's some really, really, industry heavy hitters, that you're trying to compete against, and it's really difficult to outplay them. So you just have to like think outside of the box, which is what I pride myself in because that's how I've seen a ton of results in the work I've done. It's not really thinking up front, like, how can I rank for the number one keyword? But how can I rank for this keyword that doesn't, doesn't have as much traffic, but it's super high in intent. So, you're going to get some sales out of it. But so yeah, so those are like the three I'd say main channels, all B2B. I don't have B2C experience, so I wouldn't even know.
Hmm.
I mean, I know it's similar, but like just understanding your customer base. So it'd have to be a very specific product that I would like partner with, that like I know about. But like B2B, I understand
Hmm.
how it works and like the sales cycles, the sales funnels. Like I kind of
Yeah.
understand all of that. And so like that's try to where I stay because that's like where I'm comfortable.
All right. So now I'm not going to ask you specifically about SEO stuff because I'm not smart enough to ask you questions about that. If I have questions, I come to you. But tell me, like, how did you learn this? Okay. So a lot of people who are pivoting careers would say, yeah, I'd love to do what Nathaniel did. And, insert excuse here, right? Of something that you did that no one else could do. And how did you learn about SEO and not only learn about it, but start to become good at it? Like, where did you start?
Well, I'd say the learning and getting good at it are two very different, very different
Okay.
approaches. The learning, so he may get slack, and he may, kind of be like you may have your preference about him. But I started with Neil Patel, like where I think all probably junior marketers start. Like, oh, he's got this big thing. So
Okay.
I just started like watching his webinars. I started attending everything he did. I read all of his blog posts. And then HubSpot has an academy. I did the HubSpot Academy. So I just did all these like external things. Like, okay, like here's the knowledge. Like, we'll present it to you. And then the actual like getting good at it was just doing it. And so that's where it's very difficult if you're going to try to do this as a paid situation. That's where like when I was offering it for free, they had nothing to lose because it wasn't anything bad. I had nothing to lose. I only had things to gain because I'm doing it for free, but I'm getting the knowledge. Like, here's what's working, here's what's not working. Because I can only imagine learning like the way I did and trying to like sell that as a service right away would have like been super intense and high
Hmm.
pressure because any failure you make just like impacts your brand or the company you're working for. But like when I make a failure when I'm already doing it for free, it's like, okay, you get what you pay for, right? So um but just doing it, that's why I'm a firm believer now. Like anytime like someone reaches out to me, I say you need to start your own like website so you can test things. It's like the only way to know like what's working, what's not working is testing things. Because it's a lot easier to test your own thing because if it tanks, you're not like, it doesn't matter. But like if something tanks on like your employer's site, like that's
Right. Very different
that,
if it's you or like someone who's outside of you.
yes, exactly.
And,
Like I don't want to be responsible for like the big HubSpot decline in traffic, right? Like
yeah.
that's not going to be me. Like no way. Like I'm going to test this outside of that first. So yeah, it's just a lot of testing, and then I think also finding people that can mentor you, right? Like one of the like big reasons I figured out how to like transition my career into like what does this look like outside of just like marketing as a whole, because like once you get into like a job, you realize how many job titles there are, and it can kind of be
Hmm.
confusing, especially for career transition. And you're like, I just thought it was marketing.
Yeah.
I I didn't think it was, there's digital marketing, field marketing, like all these subsets of marketing. And so I was like, I'm just going to be a marketer. But I talked to somebody, I was like, what am I like? Here's what I do. Like, what like would you call my job title? Because I'm just a marketer. And he's like,
Hmm.
here's, you're a digital marketer. I'm like, oh, okay. So then I started like mapping that out in my career. I'm like, oh, okay. So like now I know here's what I need to focus on. But I've reached out to him a couple of times saying, I have this problem. Like, can you help? Or, do you have any advice? And he can point me into like the right resource. And so, sorry, my wife just yelled at me on the camera. I'm like, I'm in a meeting. I just heard
Real
it. I'm like,
life.
"Ugh."
This is live.
Yeah, yes, it is. Um, but yeah, so it's just kind of like finding someone that can like speak into your like career, and whether that's
Yeah.
like they know they're speaking into your career or not. Like that's why LinkedIn's so great. You can connect with people who are like like CMOs of like these major companies just giving away advice. Like you would never, probably know them like on a personal level, but like they're just sharing advice away for free that they learned over the 20 years in their career. And it's free. And you
Yeah.
just like follow them. And so you just like, okay, heck yeah. Like I'm just gonna like I don't have to learn this from myself, trial and erroring. I could just say, yes, here's the knowledge for free, right?
Yeah. I I'm I always tell people that's one of the big things that I love about LinkedIn. I mean, there's a lot of chatter and noise and all that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of, people putting silly stuff out there, bad advice, but there's also a lot of really good advice. There's a lot of accessibility to people who, whether it's you and I meeting one another and we never would have met in real life, or it's, access to somebody who's 20 years in front of, where we would like to be on our vision boards, if you will. And there's an opportunity to hear from them, learn from them, connect with them, build relationship with those people. And again, you might not ever find yourself in the same physical room as any of those people who you find yourself in this digital room of LinkedIn. And it is such an opportunity. When you have interacted, I want to kind of pivot this a little bit. When you've interacted with people on LinkedIn, and as you've grown on LinkedIn, you're a content creator, you generate great content and advice regularly. um, what would you tell people about the right way to be on LinkedIn? Like if you were a job seeker, if we can tune it that way, like what are you doing on LinkedIn and how are you using it the right way?
I mean, I think like this is where kind of SEO kind of really plays a big part. If you want to
Yeah,
like if you're trying to find a job where we've all been there, right? We've all been looking for jobs, and this market really is a really hard market to be looking for work. Um, but like you want to make sure your profile stands out in a way that like you're going to be like when someone searches for like say I want to be like I want to find a job as like an SEO manager, right?
hmm,
I want to make sure my profile talks about SEO and I'm posting about SEO. And I think I think there's two ways you can approach it. You can either share like things you learned, and so sometimes that can be hard because you got to like sometimes you're gonna share failures. I think being like authentic, like don't always share the wins because like nobody wins all the time. Like, no way.
yeah,
Like very rarely. I don't know if I've known anyone that has, but that's where a lot of times social media kind of gets a negative rap because most people just share the highlights, right? Like the good stuff. Here's my awesome house. You don't see the terrible life that they're living that they hate. They
right.
hate everything about it. It's like
All-
but this house though, right?
and all the crap you shoved in the closet to make your house
Yes.
look beautifully clean that you have to go
Yeah,
pull
I'm
back out as soon as you get
standing.
your
You can't
picture.
see, but there's boxes down here because we're moving. So like I had to move my desk up. So it's like,
Yeah,
look, this is my office is
yeah,
clean, right? You don't see all this stuff behind. um, but yeah, so I think you have to be authentic, but then I think you can also share like so things you're learning or things you want to learn, right? Like I think being open to say, I want to go here. Here's what I'm doing to prepare. That allows you one to like maybe network people who are in the same boat, but then it allows people who are where you want to go to step in and say, hey, like here's what I would do, and like I think it could be looked down on from some people, but like everyone has something to say about LinkedIn, right? Like my wife, she's like, "You're an influencer." I'm like, I mean, I don't feel like I'm an influencer.
yeah,
Like no one, I don't want to be called an influencer. I just like I share stuff on LinkedIn, and it's if
yeah,
I have people that follow me, great. But if not, like okay, I'm still sharing stuff because I enjoy it. Like I enjoy the aspect of like the testing, right? Like test like is this resonating with people? Is this because I'm a marketer, I want to know like the reach. Here's the impressions, here's the engagements, here's the likes, here's the job titles that people saw. Works really well like when you're looking at like from a sales perspective. Uh, but when you're just like looking to help people, it's also nice. Like when I post my job postings on Friday, which I've switched. This is my last one today, but switching to a group so I can just post regularly rather than
oh,
worrying about
nice,
the algorithm. Because like the algorithm can really like it starts to really impact all your other posts negatively. And
Yeah.
then sometimes people see it and it's like, oh, hey, I saw this job, but it's like, this is like 4 weeks ago. And it's hard. So I'm like, okay, let's just create a group where I can help people. So
Okay.
if you're
What
looking for
do
that
you post
comment,
all marketing jobs, or what kind of stuff do you post?
so primarily marketing jobs, just because I'm mostly
Yeah.
connected to marketers, but sometimes I'll post, like some of the companies I'm connected to, they'll post software engineers, things like that, because I'm connected
Okay.
to a lot of different people just over the course of my career. I'm like, oh, I like you were the software engineer over here. Like
Yeah.
I liked when we had conversations. We may have nothing in common, like from like a perspective of like an employment perspective, or rather than just like the employer, but like on like a personal level, we have a lot in common. So I'd like to see what you're doing, even though I know nothing about developing software. I work in a software company, so I'm like, okay, that's like one
Yeah.
minor thing. So I do have some of those, but it's primarily marketing jobs again, just because I'm connected to so many marketers. I think out of the 10,000 followers, I would be willing to bet like 8,000 of those are marketers of some aspect.
Okay. All right. So, we've had some nice comments going on here in the chat, and I want to, Sarah, I don't know if Sarah's still on, but Sarah had asked a question, and I can pull it up here. I don't know how giant it's going to get on the, there we go. I don't know if you can see that too, Nathaniel, but says she had done a similar situation. This was back when we were talking about sort of your breaking into marketing, and she
Yeah,
raised her hand, and 10 years later, she had risen to a VP of marketing. Um, I don't know how to make this keep going on the screen here for everybody else. Technical challenge. But the question she was asking is, she's been in the market and searching, and she feels like she's being held back because she's missing a shiny MBA in marketing. She's been searching since April 2024. Do you have any advice for my similar situation in a job search?
yeah, that's tough, right? Like there's some companies, and I found the more old school the company, the more important a degree is. And so I like in my career search, like I've been held back very clearly because I don't have a degree. I don't have a degree at all. Like I dropped out of college and I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to pay a bunch of money and have a piece of paper that I don't want to use. So I have 0 degrees. So it's not even I don't have an MBA or anything in the specific channel. It's just I have nothing. They're like, do you have a degree? I'm like, no. And so I know like over time like that has held me back. But I first off, you don't have to. I don't think you have to have it. I would rather like when I hire, I don't care what your uh, school experience is, because you could have straight A's and be a terrible employee, or you could have you could have failed like out of college and still be the best employee you've ever been. I'd rather see your results. So I would double down on like what value are you bringing. And so I'm a big fan of revenue. I know marketing sometimes people can get like against revenue, but
Hmm.
when you're especially in like a startup, in business in general, they care about what their overhead is and what they're bringing in. And so if you can tie that to revenue, like it's going to be such a
Yeah.
better sell. And then
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to maybe the dream of working for the biggest company. I'm not sure what your dream, if it is working for like a giant company, it may not happen. And that unless you start with a startup and then work your way, like that you grow them and then they become this household name. But I wanted to like work. I thought it would be so cool to work for Google, but I'm like, I don't know that that's ever going to happen, and that's okay. Like I don't now that I've like gotten where I'm at, I don't know that I want to work at Google just because you got to go to the office, you got to do all these extra things. I
Yeah.
don't want to do those things, right? Like I'm understanding in my life, I like living in my rural area with my family. My kids have a yard to play in, and I don't have to like commute to an office that's an hour drive one way. Like I don't. I get to just be here in my house. My kids are usually running around in the background screaming and crying or knocking on the door. So I enjoy that. So I think you just got to find like what you're looking for, and then understanding that sometimes it might hold you back. But that doesn't mean you're a bad employee or a bad marketer or a bad whatever. It just means that that's not that company's not the right fit for you. Not that
Yeah.
you're not the right fit for them. It's not a you problem. It's a them problem.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
That it's like alignment, right? Like what you're talking about is, if that's not the path you've gone, where you have the shiny MBA, and that's something that another company values, it's not aligned. Or if they want you, if it's Google and it's a big household name and they want you to be in the office 5 days a week, and you have to live in an expensive city in a small apartment, and that's not what you want for your family, it's not aligned. And I think there's a really interesting thing that I've noticed in some conversations lately, just talking about how what aligns with your life changes over time too. Like you mentioned, when you were before children and you were traveling a lot and you had time differently and your probably your priorities stacked a little differently, you can do different things. And now you have little ones and you're like, I want a yard for them to play in. And there's things that evolve and change. And so our priorities tend to change too around what we're looking for. But one thing I think about with this MBA question that I encounter semi frequently is whether it's factually true that you need the MBA or whether it feels like you need the MBA. Kind of going back to when you and I talked about getting the endorsement or the certification or blessing that you're good enough and then going after it versus just going after it. I do think I see a lot of times, I see this a lot with pivoters. I actually did this myself. I'll own it. When I didn't know what I wanted to do, I had like a panic period of time where I went back to get a master's degree in human resources. And I don't know why I did that. I never finished it, but I had to continue to pay for it. I finally paid it off, but I have half of a master's degree. So, and it's because I felt a certain way. I was at a crossroads. I was lost. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Life felt hard. So it seemed like I needed some sort of credential or validation to ground me again. And I think a lot of times there's this perception of, I think it's because I don't have X and that's why I'm not getting picked. And that's a really interesting opportunity to inspect whether are there signals telling you that that's factually true, or is that more just a series of unfortunate things that have all not worked out and you're sort of placing blame on this thing that is living in your head rent free for whatever reason, and it might not be the MBA at all, or the whatever it is that you need.
Yeah, I mean, I would even look at your resume too, right? Like, there's times where I wasn't getting, wasn't getting anything. I'm like, what is wrong?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm a great employee. Then I look at my resume based on tips that you've shared. I'm like, oh, I'm just
Thanks.
spouting this generic BS, right? Like,
Yeah.
who's going to hire this person? There's zero stats here, right? So I overhauled it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to throw all the stats in there. And so I think that was maybe too much, but finding that balance. But like, you
Swung
have
too
to
far
be,
the other way.
yes, it's just a bunch of numbers. Like, this looks complex. Like, okay, they're gonna look at that and be like, wow, this guy just did like an AI generator or whatever. um but no, I think you need to look at it and just say, like, be honest with yourself, right? Like, it's hard because you want to believe the worst in yourself or the best in yourself. It's very hard to find right in the middle where it's like, okay, like,
Yeah.
is this resume good, or would I hire this person based on that? But also, I think it's important to understand this is a really sucky market, like, for everybody,
Hmm.
not just not just like senior levels or entry
Yeah.
levels. It just sucks all around. Like, I mean, you see tons and tons of people getting laid off, and so the job seeker market is huge. And so these people who are looking for employees, they can be super super aggressive in what they're looking
Yeah.
for. Like, like, I've talked to people and like, oh, I don't have this industry experience, so like they didn't pick me. Like, that was like the final draw. And it's like 2 3 years ago, they were looking for people. They didn't care what the industry was because industry doesn't necessarily matter. But it's like,
Right.
now they're being very very specific, and that's unfortunate. And it's just kind of part of where we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just tough.
Yeah. So another one of those pendulums that swung real hard the other way. It was like, if you had a pulse and an interest in a job, they were like, yes, you're hired, and you got paid a lot of money in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was irresponsible of a lot of companies that they really weren't thinking around a corner, because a lot of them, that's where we're seeing these layoffs and things like that
Yep.
too, is a lot of them overhired and weren't super um, responsible. But yeah, I want to pivot here because Varun has a question. I'm going to pull this one up. Hopefully the full one shows up on the screen. What advice would you give for AI SaaS startups in terms of GTM SEO strategy to start building authority?
So first off, get your site live. The longer your site's been active, the better you're going to rank, just long term. Like, that's just, if you look at the top 10 results, usually it's because they've been on Google, 3+ years, I think was the statistic. And that's a few years old, so it may be updated now, but that's the stat I still read. Um, so, and then I would focus on like, what are you like? What's your purpose? And then what is your audience searching for? Because a lot of times and I talk about this all the time too, but like a lot of times people will focus on the algorithm, like you see it on LinkedIn, like, oh, like what the algorithm sucks, this, all this, that, and the other. But it's like, no, just focus on like the value of like what are you offering people, and then the algorithm will adjust or your content will be seen by the right people. And so I found the most success when I stopped caring, like, oh, is Google going to index this? Is it not? And just focusing on the value we can provide for their, like like my customers, right? Like the line, like their
Mm-hmm.
customers, like so we'd be your customers. What are they searching for? What pain point do you solve? And how can the content you create help fill that funnel for that? So like and I'm a firm believer giving value free first. I know it's like it goes against like when you're actually building a sales funnel, but I'm proof it works because I have given away so much value for free over the years. Like you can look at my TikTok. There's just I don't even know how many videos just of me giving away like free tips that people can use, and like then you don't need me for certain things, right? But long term strategy, there's a lot of other things that go to play that are a lot more technical. But yeah, I would just focus on like the value you can provide your customers, and and there's a company I forget the name of it, but they've been kind of going against the narrative where their big play book for SEO was all about like building customer like workflows essentially where like
Mm-hmm.
their soft I forget the name of the company. It's going to bug me. I'll think of it later and I'll maybe chat in the
Okay.
comments here and throw it on there. But their whole strategy was just posting like blog content that helps their audience in all the different industries and verticals that they're in, not necessarily use their software but just help them like this very very specific use cases like the software could solve, but they don't talk about their software at all. But they just like, here's how you can find XYZ, or here's how you do XYZ. And I mean they're blowing up, right? Like
Yeah.
the SEO is their number one uh, traffic driver, but also sales funnel. Like that, it fills their funnel so fast because they're just giving away all these step by step tutorials and like all these things that would have. They never once mentioned their product, which goes against what most SaaS
Yeah.
companies do, right? You want your product front and center, like, hey, come check us out. Like we're the best. Like
Yeah.
we're the best. But instead of, I would recommend flipping the narrative. Like here's your pain point, not how do we solve it, but like here's like we see your pain point, and it'd be so great if like this would do this, right? Like it'd be awesome if like let's say we're talking about like trying to get hired. It'd be awesome if you could get hired today. Like that would like that's the answer.
Right.
And then the very next part is like how you solve that problem, not how you're the best company or we're endorsed by all these other companies because nobody cares. Like I don't
Yeah.
care if Google uses you because like it could be one employee from Google that uses you and now you put Google on your logo,
People
right?
take creative liberty with those.
Very, very creative. Like how is this not like how are lawyers not getting involved
Yeah.
with some of these things?
Yeah.
But yeah, but flip it. Just like I want to show here's how we can help. Like here's how like these things can help you without mentioning my product, right? Like that. So that would be what I'd focus on: customer value by like you offering value, and then again just content that's not just going to like be AI written, right? Because what you see a lot of is people are doing because AI is so accessible. They're just writing content, and I mean, you see it on LinkedIn, you see the posts, you see the comments, you see the content when you Google search, and
Woof.
it's just
Yeah.
yeah, it's terrible. It's like long term, that's not a strategy that works. You may see an increase at first, but it's going to tank because there's no value, there's no sustenance behind it. It's just garbage. Anyone can do it. So if anyone can do it, why should I trust you to do it? And so you got
Yeah.
to think about that too. So make sure it's human because we're all talking to humans, whether or not it's the algorithm or software or tennis shoes. Like right, like we're still human to human always.
Do you AI is an interesting one that you brought up. I feel like everyone is trying to find their way that they use it where I think when you start out there's like this weird curve or this weird like life cycle of AI, like you discover it and you're like it will do everything for me, and then there's sort of maybe a peak where you feel like it is doing everything for you, and then there's like this hard drop off point where you're like, oh, it's like useful, but I have to decide how I want to use it, and I have to always keep it I always tell people it's kind of that 80-20 kind of thing. Like it can get you to 80% quickly. And then that 20%, that finishing, the polish, the humanization, the unique that is you, like you got to still bring that. So have you found ways that like do you use AI at all in the work that you do? Have you found ways to help accelerate or make certain things faster for yourself, but still balance it with you?
Yeah, so I mean, I made a post, I think it was either this week or last week, where like I share some prompts that I've worked on, and I've seen other people post some prompts, like some big people who are like in SEO, and I like
Yeah.
refined them and tweaked them that fit like what I'm doing. And so I got a folder of like just the actual prompts that I use, because AI can be a tool. Like obviously it's a
Yeah.
very helpful tool. It's just you got to use it right. Like don't just copy paste whatever comes out. And so I think the more specific you can be, the better it's going to do. You got to understand though, it's still a a language model. It's predicting what should come next, so it's not always going to be perfect. That's why I always like to add variants. So it's like instead of give me a title for this page, give me 15 titles for this page. Make sure you're changing X Y so like make sure the intent behind it is different. Try a couple that are like more question based, and like get very specific, because the more specific you can be, the better the results are going to be. But then don't be afraid to just run it again, right? Like I
Hmm.
there's so many times where I've ran the same prompt back to back and gotten completely different results, but the second set
Yeah.
of results were like a lot better. Then you got to take it and say, okay, like this title is almost there, and I'm going to use, like I like how they, like use this little phrase, but I'm gonna like just tweak it just a little bit. So it's me writing it, not just AI, pushing it out. Um, but yeah, I mean, I use it for that. I use it to, to do like, help me like understand like, here's the top three results. I'll go ahead and just find the top three results or top five results. I want the, the title tags for all these, these 10 pages. And so then I can like get those listed out. Then I go check them, make sure. Cause again, sometimes ChatGPT will just do its own thing and just come up with
Hmm.
its own thing. So sometimes I'm very specific. Don't make something up. Like I want you to actually look, because it
Yeah.
does it. Like it just makes stuff up. Like where did you get this number? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I made that up. Like what? Like like okay, so sometimes you got to be very
That's
specific.
my prompts now. I don't know about you, but I'm like, you may not invent numbers or
Yeah.
because it will do that, right? It will just put, there were 37 giraffes, and you're like, no, there's nothing fact based about saying there were 37 giraffes. You cannot say that, and so I have to instruct it now. I'm like, you may not introduce data that is completely fabricated, and if you believe a number needs to be present in something, because I do a lot with getting to 80% on, how do I want to write this bullet and how do I want to make this succinct and like take a whole gobbledygook of ideas and get it boiled down into like a really succinct, that Google XYZ format resume bullet. But
Yeah.
sometimes it'll just make up a data point for somebody. So I'm like, put an XXX if you think a number needs to go there, but you don't have the number available for me based on what I provided. And that does seem to catch it and stop it from just generating completely made up nonsense. But if you're not paying attention
Oh no.
and you're just copying and pasting, like, yikes.
Oh yeah. I always like if I'm doing like something for like so I use it a lot for my own stuff, just like
Yeah.
because when I'm like working on my SEO website, like I have clients, right? Like I have a day job and I have clients, I have kids. Like I don't necessarily want to focus on my website because I have
Right.
a very limited time. So I'm like, if you're using a data point, you have to have a source that I can link to that's in like the last 3 years, right? Like I don't want something that's from 2007 and like, oh, like that's a relevant, data point, because
Yeah.
that's not relevant at all. So I'll also add that in. Like if you do provide some type of statistic or number or data that I'm not providing, you have to have something to back it up. Like with a resume, you don't,
Hmm.
yeah, XXX, like do nothing, because no data point is better than a fake data point.
Well, and I'd go fill it in too, to be clear.
Yeah,
Like I would go fill that in. I wouldn't send that out on a resume. I probably should clarify that. I wouldn't send that on a resume, but that gives me the prompt then to say, oh, human Erin, you need to go find out what XXX would be to use this
yeah,
sentence. So yes, if you're listening to this, please don't leave the XXX in the
yes.
bullet point. That would be a bad thing. Um, all right, I know we have a few minutes left here. You're the SEO marketing dad, and we've talked a lot about marketing and SEO and career pivot, but we haven't talked a lot about dadding and how that all fits into things. And I'm a mom of two. I'm a single mom of two. And so like you, as you were telling me, like I've got kids and I've got a day job and I've got this side business that my consulting business, it's it's a well-oiled machine and a house of cards all in the same boat, right? Like
Yeah.
where you're doing many things and you have many interests and talents, but it's giving enough to each of the things and how do you keep everything prioritized? So I'm curious, just parent to parent, how do you prioritize family and juggling everything that you're doing? And yeah, like any tips or tricks?
Oh man, that's tough because it's a work in progress. I think I'm getting better. I think like one thing I started really focusing on was like my mental and physical health because like that kind of just plays a large part in a lot of things. I've been at like
Yeah.
major burnout levels before, and I'm actually at like twice as much work now than I ever was. But like because I have like mental and physical health like prioritized, and like that like plays a big part in all of it. But like I try to be like unless I'm in a meeting, my door is open, my kids run in because I do want them to know like, hey, like, I may be working, but I'm still here with you. And like I want them to come in and say, Dad, can you, help me button my pants? Because like we're working on that, right? With my oldest, she's 4, turning 5 this year. She can't quite get her pants buttoned. So I want her, like, yeah, come in here and I'll button your pants for you. Like that's like like that's part of the benefit of me working from home. Like I'm here present with you. I may not be able to go play with you. I want to go play with you, but I can't right now. But maybe, like here in 30 minutes after my meeting, I can, go get coffee and I'll play with you for, 10 minutes. And so
Yeah.
at one point I had this timer, but that got really annoying really fast because I'm like, like if I wanted to continue playing, it's like, well, I have
Right.
15 minutes, but or if like, man, I need to go, I'm getting like Slack calls like crazy. I need to, hop off early. I felt bad. I was like, oh, the ringer didn't go off, and so again, I'm by far, 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 far from perfect, and I think the only reason I can be as present in all aspects is because I have a wife who supports every part of like what I do, and I couldn't do it without her. And like, my hats off to you because like I feel overwhelmed like every day just trying to balance it all, and I have
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
She's the one who's like manning, like or managing the kids like 99% of the time, and so without her, I definitely couldn't, even be
Yeah.
remotely close to what I'm doing. But I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's a lot of, late nights, early mornings, weekends, like I have less time for myself. That's where like having so I focus on, I do a lot of running. And so like,
Mhm.
that's like my me time.
Yeah, somebody said in the comments here about you're supposed to talk about how you started running. Let's
Oh
hear
yeah.
about your story and how you
Well,
started. I don't. Yeah.
so it wasn't my idea. I have so at like one point or other, I have tried running 2 times in my life before this one. I have sprained both my knees both times trying to do this, and so I was like, running is not for me. I'm just a big guy. I'll do other things. But my wife signed up for a 5K, like a turkey trot, like for
Mhm.
Thanksgiving. I was like, that's dumb. Like, why would you sign up? And I'm like, well, I'll do it with you. I was like,
You
worst case
come
scenario,
that's why did you do this? To I'll do it with you.
yeah, I was like, that's dumb. But I was like, I'm not gonna run it all, maybe we'll run some of it, but I just
Yeah.
know it's not for me. I'll sprain my knees again. And so we bought this treadmill. It's the middle of summer. I think it was July. I mean, it was hot, and I'm a big dude, so I didn't feel comfortable going out and like everyone's gonna look at you when actually nobody really cares. They just if you're in the road, they just say get out of the road, right?
Right.
But I was in my garage. It's like literally 102 degrees in the garage, and I'm like, we're out there doing intervals on this treadmill. Like, this is so dumb. Like, why? Like, I'm like, I literally blamed her so much. I was like, why did you sign up for this? Like, I got to do this too. And somewhere along the way, I started running outside because I'm like, I can't do the treadmill anymore. This is horrible. I think the most I ran on the treadmill was, I made it to 5K, but it was like intervals. And
Mhm.
so I ran outside and just like immediately was like, wow, like the clarity I got, just the like, I don't know, there's something nice about being in the sun or being in outside. Like, I run in like early, early mornings. I don't actually ever see the sun, but just being outside, like, just I was like, wow, like there's something here. Like, I'm gonna keep doing this. And I did it slow. It's like that was the thing. Like, I wasn't focusing on speed. I was more on distance and just getting it
Mhm.
in. And yeah, I just kind of started falling in love. I fell in love with how I felt because I was just like, again, I was overweight, and I'd always been overweight my entire life, and I'm still overweight, but I'm less overweight. And so, just like the physical like health, I just felt so good. Like I'm playing with my kids. I'm like, I'm not tired. Like I can go run around the yard with them, or I can go, crawl on the floor and not be like, oh,
Yeah.
my legs are sore, my knees hurt. And I just was like, I'm gonna keep doing this. Like, I enjoy this. Like, this is for my kids. I want to be like long term healthy for them. I don't want to, die at the age of 40, and now they're growing up with their grandparents, or like my
Yeah.
siblings or my wife's siblings. And I was like, well, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it right. And so then that kind of just became like being healthy all around, right? Like trying to eat better, and it just kind of just spitball. And the next thing you know, I'm running a half marathon. I'm like, who am I? Like, if I would have talked to myself from 5 years ago, I'd be like, I would hate
Right.
myself. Like,
You'd be like,
what kind
this
of
is
person?
dumb. Why am I doing this?
Why are you doing this? Like it hurts, right? Like I have so many like my toenails on my feet. Like there's two that like just don't grow now because like they're just like
Yeah,
lead. So my
that's the
like
sign of a runner, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, why would you do this? Like, you're literally bleeding and you're running and you're still doing it and it hurts.
I
Like,
don't
I don't know.
know. I
It's
don't
not right. It's
know.
not smart, but it's just I do it because I love it now. But yeah, it was kind of my wife. She kind of started it.
Yeah. I know we're coming to the final minute here, and so usually as a last question, I always like to ask guests for a piece of good advice. Maybe it's something you've received, maybe it's advice that you like to give, but um, something that might put a little wind in everyone's sails and be something that they could reuse.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that was told to me, and you see it all the time, and so it's probably nothing new. If it is new, like here you go. um, but don't compare yourself to where you want to be, or compare yourself to where someone else is, because where you're starting and where they are is a very different. Like, there's a gap,
Mm,
right? Like, where you're starting could be, you know 5 years before where they are now. And you don't like the thing about social media is you don't always see the work that was put in before where they are, right? Like, I
true.
put in 3 years worth of content on LinkedIn, and I have made no money on LinkedIn, right? Right. And I have 10,000 followers. So like, you could say, oh, I want to have 10,000 followers and I'll be a millionaire. But it's like, unfortunately, I'm not a millionaire yet. I don't know if you are, but if you are, that's great. But
Yeah. No, not
I'm
yet.
far from it. I would love to be a millionaire, but like that. So like,
Yeah.
you can't compare yourself to where you're going or where you want to be. I would rather look at where I've come from, right? Like, I started as a technician and I'm a marketer, and
Yeah.
I make more now than I ever could have made as a technician. It's like, that's a better like metric versus, oh, like I look at this person over here and I'm like, man, he's got $1 million business. Like, why am I not as good as him? Like, no, it's like he put in a lot more years, or he's put in more work. His offering is different. So like, it's just like, you just don't compare yourself to somebody else, because like, there's unfortunately there could always be somebody who's doing maybe better than you,
Yeah.
or has a bigger business or a nicer car or a nicer house, or is more fit, more physical. There's always something that you could be like, oh, I'm not good enough there. But like, that's a lie. First off, so like, you're
Yeah.
better than you were yesterday. You're better than you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And that's a way better measurable result versus
Yeah.
someone else is.
Yeah. Measuring yourself against your own yardstick of progress versus what you think someone else is doing. And those external indicators, how much somebody's making or the house or the car that they have, or, it's oftentimes you don't know the story behind it, or what else is going on. Because I as I've grown in life and I've been through my hardships, I'm pretty convinced that none of us have a life that doesn't come with stuff. And by stuff, I mean the crap, the garbage, the down, the dark, and so sometimes it's like we look at other people and think, well, if I just get to this thing, then that's going to make everything all better. And the truth is like, I'm pretty sure we're all stuck being human, and life has a way of just giving you the good and the bad. And
Yeah.
so it sounds like you've had a lot of success in your career with being present, with looking for opportunities where you're at, believing in yourself and taking a little bit of a bet on yourself. And sounds like you're keeping your priorities in line too with your family and, thinking about the things that really matter most to you. So with that, I think we're going to wrap. We're a couple minutes over, and this was lunch break today. So I hope everybody had a nice time who joined. Thank you, Nathaniel. Is there anything you want to plug before we? I mean, I know you're doing SEO stuff and all that, but like, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more, if they want to work with you, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, my LinkedIn's there. You can go to my website, theseomarketingdad.com. It's a big mouthful. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it shorter, but I don't want to pay thousands of dollars because anything with
Yeah,
SEO in it is a lot of money. But yeah, my LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Just connect with me, shoot me a message. I think my
yeah,
my LinkedIn is free to message, so you don't have to be a paid user or connected. So you can just shoot me a message and let's chat. I'm willing to help with SEO or career advice, or
yeah,
just want some just to be connected. That's also fine.
yeah. Generally, great person to know is what I would say. If you're watching, I would say give Nathaniel a follow. Learn from him. He makes great content, and like I said, all around awesome person. So thank you, Nathaniel. I really appreciate it, and I think we're going to call it a wrap for today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.